context of the coronavirus crisis. And we all know, and everyone on the panel, everyone giving evidence is only too aware of the pressures that legal aid has been under for many, many years, most acutely, of course, since LASPO in 2013, but going back before that too. And indeed, that's why the All-Party Parliamentary Group was set up in the second half of the last decade. But coronavirus has, as in so many other areas of public policy, exposed and indeed intensified a number of the pressures that are applying to those services. It's exposed inequalities of every kind, social, economic, ethnic, regional inequalities, and every system that is under stress before COVID exploded on us is finding that experience even more of a pressure than it was before. But equally, a crisis does require you to take stock, and it did seem to us like a good moment to set out what we felt the sector needed to do and to request from government, to demand from government as a way of building a recovery plan for the future. It's the biggest inquiry into legal aid that has been held. And we're very grateful to LAPG and to our partners who are helping us to do this, both with these evidence sessions and with our call for evidence that we will be unfolding through the different sectors over the course of the coming months. And today, of course, we are looking at the area of criminal legal aid. Our next witness is Anthony Graham. Anthony is the co-director of Amosu Robinshaw Solicitors and also from the Black Solicitors Network. So if Anthony, could you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your background in the law and about your firm, and then Lord Lowe is going to start with some questions to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Firstly, good morning, Chair, and good morning to the rest of the panelists. It's a pleasure to be here. In terms of a brief introduction to myself, I originally trained in a local authority, which was fantastic in terms of a general assessment of how other areas of law work. But then I subsequently decided upon qualification to join a high street firm, which I did, and worked for a short period of time, and then joined my current firm, Amosu Robinshaw, some 17 years ago. Approximately, say, 15 years ago or so, I became a partner, and I operate the firm with my co-director, Mr. Ola Amosu, and we are a 100% criminal defence firm. We are a boutique defence firm operating on the high street.
Thank you very much. Lord Lowe, would you like to start asking the questions?
Thanks very much, Karen. Anthony, you've practiced in criminal legal aid, I think you said for 15 or 17 years or something like that. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell us how practice has changed in that time?
Well, I would say practice has changed a lot. And the two main changes I would say would be a lack of fresh talent that's coming through currently. I know the other speakers have alluded to this, and I will completely agree, because when I first qualified, the average age of a solicitor, I would suggest, was much lower than it is now. And when you go to court now, what you mainly see are young barristers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there are a lot of young barristers as opposed to young defence solicitors who are practicing. So that's a real concern. And again, I know the other panelists have spoken about this, but it's a real concern, particularly given the fact that, of course, you can argue it's a dying profession, possibly. However, we need more talent to come through. And this is primarily due to the lack of funding that has taken place. The lack of a cash injection over the years has arguably been negligent. And because of this, as mentioned, is a real concern about the lack of talent. So I would say it's twofold: lack of talent and also the lack of funding.
Would you describe this area of law, this area of work as being in crisis?
Completely. totally in crisis. I mean, if I'm to speak about my demographic in particular, the concern is, of course, the fact that we have an overrepresentation of BME defendants in the system. And then we have a lack of BME solicitors coming through.
Yeah.
It's totally in crisis. And even from a disability perspective as well, you know, I would see on the odd occasion previously disabled criminal lawyers. There are hardly any now also, and that's a real concern. So yes, most certainly it's in crisis.
So defendants often don't see anybody like themselves representing them. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I wouldn't say that per se, because just like Kerry, I can only speak about London, and I operate in London. And I think it's right to say that there are a fair amounts of BME lawyers in London who are committed, who are loyal, and have chosen to enter the profession. However, the concern is, unless it's made attractive financially, there will be a lack of lawyers coming through to represent those who look like themselves, and that's a real concern.
So would you describe this area of work as not being very diverse?
Well, I would say, again, speaking in London, it's quite diverse. I can't speak for out of London. But what we need to appreciate is the fact that the lawyers who are in the system at this particular time, a lot of them are, as the other panelists have mentioned, mid-40s to late 40s coming through. Those of us who went to university did not have to pay for university fees. You know, we received the grant, we could take a chance, we could qualify as lawyers, and even if it didn't work out for us in terms of the profession that we're in, then we could readily adapt to another area of law or even outside of law. The concern now is, given that a lot of graduates who are from BME backgrounds are from a lower socio-economic class, they won't always have the bank of mum and dad to back them, and that's a real concern. So if it's the case that, and I believe Kerry alluded to the amount of debt that she managed to accrue throughout her time, and credit to her in terms of being able to satisfy that debt. But now things have changed quite a lot. So if a graduate leaves university and then subsequently decides to take the LPC, and then leaves with 60 to 70,000 pounds worth of debt to enter a profession where the starting salary will be approximately 25 to 26,000 pounds in London, and then potentially move on to be a duty solicitor, which will be maybe 5,000 to 6,000 pounds more. The maths just doesn't add up. So the concern is, as mentioned, given the fact that those from a BME background may not be in a position to be financially supported throughout their time of study or even during the training period, that they won't be interested and they won't enter the profession. And I'm particularly worried about that.
What are the barriers to young people looking to enter the profession these days? Is it mainly financial, or are there other barriers?
Well, I would suggest it is financial. That's the real concern. You know, I've mentioned the amount of debt that a student can accrue throughout their time. So we need to try and make it more attractive, because even after they've accrued the debt, they still need to find a training contract. Now, the other panelists have mentioned the fact that they haven't offered, or some of the other panelists, I should say, they haven't offered a training contract for quite some time. You know, I'm pleased to announce that we've just recently offered a training contract to our paralegal, and he's accepted, and I'm grateful for that. And then we will have to do whatever we can as an employer to make sure that we incentivize him, to make sure that we can keep him in the profession. But not everybody's committed. And even if they want to be committed, they cannot be financially committed. It's very difficult. So I would say the major barriers to entry would be, again, from a financial perspective, the lack of funding that's currently happening at this time.
What are the barriers to people remaining in the profession?
Low salaries again, and I know I'm labouring the point, but it's crucial. Low salaries are a real issue. And I know there are some students who are participating today, and Rakesh made reference to the 1996 rates, but if I'm just to very briefly go into a bit more detail in terms of the rates themselves. So in 1996, preparation rates for magistrates' court work was £47.25 per hour. The 2020 rate is £45.35, so that's less. And then the adjusted inflation rate would be £89.36, so that's a percentage loss of 49.25%. Advocacy in the magistrates' court, £56.50 in 1996, £56.89 in 2020. So that's 39 pence by way of an increase. The adjusted inflation rate would be £106.86, percentage loss of nearly 47%. In the Crown Court, it's quite similar. So what we have here is 24 years of no investment, 24 years of no increase in the fees. Inflation has increased, of course. Rates have decreased, particularly in the police station. I think they were introduced in 2008, my memory serves me correctly. The cut came in. Some of the cuts were reversed, but we're still down from 2008 by 8.75%. How do we attract young people? And even then, how do we retain staff after they qualify? And I know Bill made a point about if we received funding for potential tradies, that they would potentially look at the maths at the end of their training period and decide, well, actually, it may not financially work out for us. And I completely understand that. However, based on the fact that we are struggling to recruit, I genuinely believe that we do need some investment in that particular area in terms of recruitment and some assistance. So yeah, I would suggest that's the major barrier for an employer.
What you're describing, does that lead to a greater turnover in the profession, people leaving prematurely?
People will leave prematurely, but you need to have the people in the first place. And that's very difficult because it's just not financially attractive as it used to be. However, I will say that it can be attractive because it's the most interesting area of law by far. There's no question about it. And the sense of pride and fulfillment that you get when a defendant is rightfully acquitted. When a defendant was wrongly prosecuted, and we've assisted in that process because we assist the vulnerable. There's no greater feeling, and regardless of the background of lawyer or defendant of who we assist, I can say for sure, I can guarantee this, that every single individual that's participating today from wherever they are across the land will say that we're united in the fact that we do this job because we want to do this job. We can do other things, but we want to do it. And we are effectively an emergency service, and we provide that service. We signpost accordingly. You know, we provide help and assistance when we need to.
In your view, the problem is recruitment more than turnover, is that right?
Exactly.
Anthony, I think that's a brilliant note on which to end your session. That's been incredibly helpful evidence, and it's covered a whole area that we haven't had evidence on already this morning. So for that additional...
Can I just make one very brief point? Again, I think it's, you know, I just want to make the point in relation from a diversity perspective. And the reason why I want to make the point is this, and And I'm very disappointed that Alex Chalk isn't here today. Very disappointed. And, Carl Turner made the point. And I'm sure this information will go back to him. He was part of a debate last week, along with David Lammy, who thrashed out the facts of the lack of or the decrease in numbers in representation order applications and police station and charging and so on and so forth. But I make the point in relation to diversity is that, people from BME backgrounds are equal stakeholders in this society. We pay taxes, we do what we need to do, and we need to be supported in the right way by virtue of the funding that we're entitled to, not simply because we're requesting it because it's right. At the end of the day, given the overrepresentation of people from a particular background, i.e. black people in the criminal justice system, it needs to be the case that individuals in the system see people like ourselves across England and Wales as well, and we need to be supported in that aspect. So it's only right, given the ratio of individuals in the system, that there needs to be a fair number across England and Wales of people that look like themselves. Thank you.
Andy, that's a very powerful point, well made, and we certainly hear it on this panel, and extremely grateful to you for reinforcing it so strongly to us this morning. And thank you, Colin, for leading that session of questioning.